now. Okay. So this is just like the draft of what I'm going to do for the video essay. Of course, I'm going to start off with the definition of comparative literature. And Doctor, I wanted to ask about the Eastern School. Does the Eastern School of Comparative Literature means the French School of Comparative Literature or like other schools, for example, like from Chinese comparative literature?
Yeah, all right, good question. Eastern would be anything, east of Europe, right? So you're looking at maybe Indian school, maybe, so Asian, we're looking at Asian. It could be South Asian, it could be Southeast Asian, it could be East Asian, it could be Middle East, right? So you don't need to focus primarily on one or another, but it all depends on the scholars that you bring in, the journal articles that you use that will kind of help inform your perspective. Which perspective are you looking at? Obviously, you're not looking at the Anglo-American European schools. You might pick up on any one of the other schools, or maybe it's scholars. Maybe there isn't a clear-cut school of comparative literature that you're focusing on. Think about what is the scholar saying, right? Like the article that we used for class, the scholars were positioning the Chinese perspective. So that's one example, right? Maybe there are other scholars positioning the Indian school. So don't worry too much about a particular brand. Is it the Chinese school? Is it the Indian school? Don't worry about that. Focus more on what the scholars are saying in the journal articles that you are using, and couch it within the discussion that you are doing in your video essay.
So which means we do not have to include both definition for comparative literature. Just based on what the scholars use in the journal articles we decided to use.
Yes, but then you will compare it to the 20th century definition. So as you have here, you've got Remark's definition, right? So Remark's definition is a 20th century definition. Then based on that, how does it differ to the articles that you are using? How does Remark's definition differs from the 21st century articles that you use? So yeah, you will make a little bit of a comparison for sure.
Okay. I figure same goes to the methodology. Methodology. It depends on the school of comparative literature we're going to use, or does it include all methodology?
Um, I would say you can do it overall, right? Like what's the essence of the difference? And then you can say, for this presentation, I want to focus on these aspects, right? Choice of text, maybe. Example, choice of text, the methodology, the any other issues. When you talk about the choice of text, maybe you want to problematize, must the text be compared to an English canon, or can it be two texts from outside the center, right? So can I take one text from the African canon, literary canon, which is translated, and another text from the Chinese literary canon, which is also translated? Or must it be one text is from the English canon and another text can be from anywhere? So what's your text selection criteria? So it all depends. It all depends on what is in the articles that you are reviewing, right? And also what you want to focus on. What's your primary focus? Is your primary focus, for instance, corpus selection. Maybe that's what you want to talk about. How do you select corpus for comparative literature, for the study of comparative literature in the 21st century? So that's your thesis, right? So if that's your thesis, then go find articles that help inform you, help in your own understanding. How should I select corpus for comparative literature for the 21st century? Or rather, whose definition or whose criteria selection works best with my understanding of comparative literature?
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, but doctor, the article that we're using based on yesterday's discussion, it would be about the world literature. So actually I've discussed it with Ruby and Shah, and we were a bit confused since the idea that we have, it does not really relate to comparative literature. It's more to the world literature. So we were wondering, how do we connect our ideas that we have discussed in class with the comparative literature aspects?
Yeah. Good question. So one way to consider this is, as a researcher, you always have lots of data. Okay. Now you have to look at the data and ask yourself, what aspect of the data do I want to present? So the data that you all have, based on the class presentation on Thursday, was on the state of world literature. Okay, the discussion is on world literature, so you cannot take it lock stock and barrel into the presentation of the video essay, because that's not what the video essay is asking from you. Okay, so what the video essay is asking is, how do you conceive the state of comparative literature in the 21st century? And one component of that, as I said, is about how selection of corpus is done. Okay, in so doing, you need to incorporate the discussion of world literature, right? So you come about it indirectly. You don't talk about it as in, this is an article I'm choosing, this article is about world literature, these are the various aspects. That would be doing a review of the article, but I'm not asking you to do a review of a particular article. Your question has a focus. You need to answer the question based on the focus by bringing in aspects of the article and articles that you have read, right? And making it fit with the question. So you must answer the question. It's like you have an essay question. You have to answer what the essay question is asking you, not what you want to talk about,
Okay.
right? That's where people lose a lot of marks, because the question is asking you one thing and you want to talk about something else. So you have to kind of match the two, you know?
I I actually can see that happening because I was confused. I was so focused on the article that we discussed in the previous class, but when I go back to the questions posted in the coursework, it's like entirely different. So yeah, that's why I asked.
Yeah, that's right. So make sure. This is where I notice a lot of students, transitioning into the master's level seminars and assignment. This is where you notice the better student, the good student from the better student. Those who are good, they really know what is being asked of them, and they deliver based on what is asked from them. Those who are managing, they know what to say, but they don't know how to word it or present it in a way that answers the question. So don't lose focus in that way.
Okay. So this one is the current state is like the continuation of these above points, right? The methodology and definition. It is also based on the article that we're using, right, doctor?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, here is where I go south. Basically, I think like I'm not quite answering the question because I focus on world literature, but I'm thinking of bringing the this theory to the methodology because I think that I'm gonna use it. And my but my argument still relates. Oh yeah, I'm trying to bring what my idea was. I'm trying to bring, first the world literature, the concept of world literature using the theory, this particular theory, and then I'm trying to argue about the importance of imaging literature and how, why it is important. Basically for me it's the evolving of the genre based on the 21st and the 20th century. Maybe the genre is the same, but the way the genre revolve is different across time. That was my idea. So basically how I want to compare between the both two genre, something like that. I was thinking of
Yeah.
doing
Go
that.
back to this. Go back to slide number 6. Okay. You see, in this slide, if you remove Damrosch and the focus on Damrosch, and if you reword the title of the slide, what
Mhm.
is the importance of this slide? What do you want to highlight? Which content do you want to highlight? Hello? Listen. Just a second.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry. What is it that you want to highlight in this slide?
I'm guessing
Don't guess. This is your slide.
I actually wanted to highlight the process of a literature becoming the world literature according to Damrosch.
Nuh-uh. That's not what you want to focus on.
Oh.
No, that's not what you want to focus on. You want to focus on the second half of your slide, which is how the literary works are accepted or enters into a kind of the canon of world literature. The process of it's being read as literature and it's being circulated from its country origin into a broader global and scope. I would start my presentation with this point.
I see.
And then, you're telling a story, or you're pitching a case. So what is the case? So this can be your introduction, right? So what is the thesis of this presentation? What is it that you are trying to prove? Are you saying that it is easier now to enter the realm of world literature? Are you saying that it's more challenging? Are you saying that comparative literature needs to actually take into consideration newer writers because the entering into the world literature canon is not as easy as one hopes? So what's your thesis? Like the circulation part of the literary works, that's not the focus, right? That's not the focus. So what that this is the process. But based on this knowledge, what is it that you're trying to say about emerging literatures? What are you trying to say about 21st century comparative literature?
Hmm.
Yeah, so what's the case that you're trying to make? That is more important than who said what. So what Damrosch says this, so what's the big deal? That's not the issue. The issue is what is your take on the issue? How does Aimi considers this issue that she's been given an opportunity to speak about, right? So you need to know what is your thesis in this rather than Damrosch's thesis. You know his thesis, but that's not the point. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Right, so it's like a short presentation to state your case of how you see comparative literature as a student of comparative literature, situated in a non-English speaking outside the center university, right? So you're not studying from the center, you're not studying predominantly English fiction only. You are from a non-English speaking country, and your exposure to world literature comes from this perspective, right? It comes from the perspective in which every text has a place, right? It's not just texts that have won awards. It's not just texts that have gone global in terms of recognition. Okay, so that being the case, you may not want to bring up this issue of world literature. If you find it not relevant, don't need to bring it up. Maybe there's something else in the article that you find useful. But if the article itself is not relevant to this discussion, drop it.
Mm.
That's how you decide. You don't need to bring in every article that you have read just to kind of show the breadth and depth of your work. No, you don't want to do that because then it comes across more confusing to the audience. Okay? So I would say begin by saying, what am I trying to say about comparative literature? You've only had 5 weeks. So that's limited, right? That's a limited time frame. But based on the 5 weeks, what do you want to say about comparative literature in the 21st century? Knowing where it came from, knowing its history, knowing its evolution, and knowing how that evolution include or exclude literatures from outside the center, knowing all that, what do you want to say about comparative literature? Is it still relevant? If it's still relevant, what kind of an approach should you take? And if this approach that you're suggesting, whose ideas are you incorporating for this approach? That's the statement you need to make,
Mm.
you know? But in making those statements, you are supporting it based on previous studies by scholars. Okay?
So I think I might need to look back on the article and what I actually want to present about because I was too hung up on the world literature that I thought previously I was like it's a delusion. No, I was too focused on that article that I thought that I need to take out points from the article and then
You go
include.
find other articles that is relevant. Not that article per se, but you go and find other articles. Yeah.
Mm, I
That's
see.
why the assignment says at least 3 articles.
Mm, mm, mm.
Now, okay, go back to the questions. Go back to the questions. No, the questions you had how world literature, something, this one. So if this is your thesis, if this is what you are trying to prove,
Mm-hmm.
focus on this. How can emerging literature be considered as world literature? Okay, so which articles have you used to help inform you of this debate between emerging literatures and world literatures? Bring in relevant articles. So I would just say Google emerging literatures, world literatures, comparative literature, and look at the kind of journal articles, books, book chapters that you find relevant. That would actually help you. So have a question like this, just this one question. What's the next slide? Was there another question?
Oh no, this is just reference.
Okay. That means there's only one question you've got here.
Yeah.
If you want to focus on this, on the premise that can emerging literature be included in the discipline of comparative literature? So don't worry too much about world literature.
All right.
That might confuse you. So I would say, how can emerging literatures be included in the discipline of comparative literature or in the study of comparative literature? Or better yet, can emerging literatures be incorporated into the discipline of comparative literature? Find scholars who support that argument, right? Find a couple of scholars that support that. So comparative literature doesn't mean you study texts that have stood the test of time, that are considered great, that are considered worthy of its literariness, right? Comparative literature doesn't need to be that, right? So how can comparative literature thrive by the coming of emerging literatures? Will that dilute the definition of comparative literature? Okay, what is the core definition of comparative literature that you want to use? So those are the fundamental issues. So this first assignment actually allows you to ask those fundamental issues and give your take on it, your 10-15 minutes take on it. That's it. Okay?
Okay. I
Any
think I
questions?
should no, I think I should inform the others because when we were discussing in our group WhatsApp, I think like they're more like me. They're very focused on the world literature article. So yeah, I think I
Have a
should inform
different
them.
WhatsApp group?
Yeah.
Ah, okay. Because I didn't see any conversation. If I saw some conversation, I would actually participate. But yeah,
Okay.
please do. But Ruby consulted me last Friday, so I thought she understood what was expected. But this is why consultation is important. And
Yeah.
if you need to see me a few times, please do that.
Because we were discussing on how to connect these two, and then we found that what we were discussing about does not include comparative literature in our discussion related to our topics. So that's where we kind of like confused. So I think we were looking at a different direction than what you want us to look at.
Go back
Okay.
to the question and answer the question.
All right, the questions that you included in the slide and also in the course book, right, doctor?
Yes.
All right. I think
Okay?
I'm going to base on that.
All right.
All right. Thank you, doctor.
No worries. Let me know if you need to see me again.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Bye bye. Take
Bye
care.
bye.